good afternoon, and thank you for welcoming me. Before I go to my topic, if you can allow me just quickly say a word. I would like to thank the organizers of this fantastic encounter. I was very delighted yesterday. I followed with a thought I haven't had for very, very long, the fantastic presentation. And I learned a lot and came back to my young years of trying to understand ancient Africa much more. I have titled my presentation of today, Tracing, let me make sure to read it properly. Tracing the revival and practices of Gacaca, because in Kinyarwanda, which is the language spoken by Rwandans, C is pronounced like in Italian, Chacha. So tracing the revival and practices of Gacaca in post-genocide Rwanda. I'm going to stick to what has been requested by the organizers in the communiqué, and tell you the following story before I start. In 15th of June, 1999, through a communiqué issued by the Ministry of Justice, the government of Rwanda made public its decision to address the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi and related crimes by drawing on Gacaca, a method of conflict management that is part of Rwanda's cultural heritage. Subsequently, the 2001 law, Gacaca law, was passed adjusting this ancient Rwanda conflict management method to address genocide and related crimes. This decision by the government of Rwanda was not only a turning point for the country's effort towards dealing with its past, it also implied that the first endogenous transitional justice practice of our time was born. As such, the decision to recreate Gacaca as a response to genocide and related crimes has also had the ability to considerably influence the prevailing global normative structure of transitional justice. In particular, this decision resonated as a rupture, a disruption, even more so since it was a blow in the build-up to the ratification of the statute creating a permanent international criminal court, ICC, held on the 17th of July, 1998. So a bit less than a year. Indeed, before Gacaca, dealing with genocide and related crime was largely inspired from the legacy of the Nuremberg Tribunal and was seen as the purview of supranational structures embodied in international courts. Therefore, the decision by the government of Rwanda created a de facto competition between the international response to genocide and related crimes embodied in the United Nations ad hoc tribunal for Rwanda and the then nascent International Criminal Court. Now, this is the context within which Gacaca came about. So, although Gacaca has been there for some decades, the presentation that I will make is very much borne out a concern with the knowledge gap regarding the dynamics of what we call in the endogenous systems, African system of governance, which Gacaca is one of. If you look at, you do a bit of reading, two major views about endogenous systems of governance in Africa have been competing, though they have been doing so in relative isolation. One stresses the loss of relevance and popularity. Another is concerned about the meaning and place in contemporary polities and societies. While the former doubts their compatibility with nowadays democracies and have a big faith in externally driven beliefs and practices, the latter have deployed important resources in putting forward the time-tested sophistication and suitability. And we were hearing that yesterday again. Clearly, both sides of these debates have importantly contributed to advance our understanding of systems of governance in Africa. However, both sides have often neglected to empirically examine the extent to what these systems of governance in Africa are being revived, in particular African context. So my presentation seeks to contribute to that debate or debate with S by addressing this weakness that I noted in the literature. By employing a post-decolonial approach to trace the revival of Gacaca in post-genocide Rwanda, one also uncover the prospect and problems of doing so, meaning reviving endogenous systems of governance in contemporary Rwanda. So quickly, I would like to say why Rwanda and what is Gacaca. For those who are not yet aware of that, I know my brother Ali is. Gacaca means simply lawn, blade of grass. In the very hilly country of the Thousand Hills, finding a place where that is flat, where you have green grass and where communities can congregate is what has inspired the name of Gacaca. We don't know very well when Gacaca appeared, but traces in the histories of the construction of Rwanda, much centuries before colonizers showed up, show that it was part of the governance of managing conflict in communities. Gacaca has not disappeared, it has survived, although it has taken different names at different places in different times. But you see the manifestation of Gacaca in that time, particularly during the reign of the King Rwabugiri, and before the colonizers come to Rwanda. But you also see during the colonization playing another functions, and the post-colonial Rwanda has had also a kind of form of Gacaca. So Gacaca has been taking different forms historically and has played different roles, including during the colonization being an auxiliary or the indigenous justice. So the reason why also I believe it is important to discuss Gacaca here is that the debate on Gacaca is so much divisive and polluted by issues of deviations. When I say deviations, you have one side of the analysts looking at Gacaca as a deviation of an idealized traditional mechanism. And you see also others who look at Gacaca as a deviation from Western-centric mechanisms. However, it is important to note one of the reasons why Gacaca deserves our attention is that Gacaca, as revived in post-genocide Rwanda, has been central to one of the accomplishments of post-genocide reconstruction, meaning dealing with almost 2,000 cases that would not have been otherwise dealt with. Gacaca is also understood and claimed by Rwanda as being ubutabera bwunga. Ubutabera bwunga, it is justice that reconciles. So a focus of it of Gacaca is aimed at, as to paraphrase Swati Parasha, also bring the knowledge of and from the margin to the center. So that's for the rationale. So the question I'll be addressing quickly was what specific context and what levels are these traditional systems of governance applied, how Gacaca came about, and how was it practiced, with what lessons. So quickly, I think many of you are familiar with the conflict that has been burning in Rwanda from 90 to 94. Simply, I will pinpoint one aspect of this conflict or the consequences of this conflict that has called Gacaca into being. We have had what they call a popularly perpetrated genocide. Genocide, for those who have taken time to discuss and think about that, they know that it is understood first and foremost as a state crime that is designed, orchestrated with the means that only states can have. One of the particularity, although this has applied also in Rwanda about the genocide against the Tutsi, the other particularity that makes the intensity of genocide so important in Rwanda is that people living side by side under similar conditions who have never killed before, killed their neighbors, making it a moment of destruction of the social fabric of that country that's much before the colonials happened to come to Rwanda, has been at least for 2 or 4 centuries in the process of construction of nation building. So that is the interactive aspect of genocide, a complex regime change, and the conflict-ridden society, those aspects that make up the context that call Gacaca into being. Gacaca is also that instrument that has been devised at the central level and applied by people who are not lawyers to deal with the case, and they did so collectively. So people were elected Gacaca judges in the communities have had to deal with cases that normally very sophisticated and well-trained judges deal with. So that's how that's what the context that Gacaca happened. So an interactive genocide and an interactive process of Gacaca. Now, how did it come about? Gacaca, it is important to note that the revival of Gacaca has been part of a process of discussion that has started almost informally, or I would say in small cycles, in the immediate aftermath of genocide, and proposed in an international conference for the first time in 1995, and repudiated as not good enough response to the magnitude of the genocide. And lastly, has been the product of a consultative meeting that has taken place in Rwanda between May 1998 and March 1999. What we call in our writings the process of decision-making towards Gacaca, that it has taken place at the village Urugwiro, where the head of states and society came together every Saturday to discuss how to deal with the dilemmas Rwanda was faced with. So it has been a process of long consultation between the elite, and the society, including through TV programs where questions were asked. So that's one thing that's happened to Gacaca. Now, what is it? How was it put in practice? Gacaca has been taken from the cultural heritage that, as I told you previously, has been evolving through time and adjusted to be able to deal with the caseload of genocide and related crimes. What are the characteristics then of Gacaca? First of all, Gacaca was run by community elected leaders. How did it happen? In October 2001, in all the district of Rwanda, people came and elect members who will make the benches, the Inkiko Gacaca, that other people call Gacaca court. And how did it happen? You didn't need to campaign to be elected. You didn't need to be a professional lawyer, but you needed to know how to write and to read. And simply you would be called or present yourself, and those interested in electing you would go behind you. And that's how were constituted the benches. So Gacaca started with the benches of many judges being in the same bench to deal collectively with matters. And that is important. So it was not like one judge, two judges. Inkiko Gacaca was made up initially with 19 inyangamugayo. These inyangamugayo were those people known for the integrity by the community who were proposed and elected. Decisions were also taken collectively. This is a central actor of Gacaca, the community elected inyangamugayo. Inyangamugayo literally means those who detest opprobrium. So people of high integrity. Now, how did then they function? They were very much based, Inkiko Gacaca were very much based on the testimonies of community members. Every week, once a week, community will gather at the most convenient place, a school or whatever. They will congregate there and they will listen. They will do the hearings. Perhaps let me speak about a few lessons that I believe have to be retained here. First of all, it is always possible to revive a system first by consulting. Consultation has been central. Number two, Rwandans have been helped by, and what I'm saying will be a matter for debate, by the homogeneous cultural heritage that they have. Whenever you could ask about Gacaca, anybody had an idea of what it meant. Number three, the language. The fact that Rwandans share the same language made it easier. I told you that in 1995, the idea was repudiated, but in 1999, because it was only Rwandans, gathering and asking the question, not about the governance, how to bring back the unity of Banyarwanda, you know, and that has been central. Number 4, it is important to see how in the interaction, we tend to try to think about those mechanisms as simply local or very centralized. I think the interaction between the central and the decentralized has been one of the key for the whatever Gacaca has been able to accomplish. Thank you very much, moderator. And I give back the floor.